Welcome to episode 390 of the show. Today, I'd like to tackle the question on how to use this podcast. What is the best way to use this podcast? Now, I think the best way to use this podcast and other resources like this that you find online is to use them as a research primer to find out new perspectives on sales and things that you haven't been exposed to before. Because what you'll find when you're listening to podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, you'll find that just like this podcast, you're not going to get a full treatment of everything that you need to know, but you're going to get a hint about things that you ought to research more about that can help you move your business forward. Now, for example, recently I was hanging out with listeners of the show, Mr. Osaze and his lovely wife, Madam Awile, who are both listeners of the show, who recently welcomed a baby to the family. Now, during the shoot, because that's what we were gathered there for a baby shoot, they admitted listening to the podcasts, and I was really happy to hear that, because actually I first met them a couple of years back, less than 5 years ago, when they had just got married. I was the wedding photographer at the wedding, and I had no idea that they had been following the other stuff that I do beyond my wedding photography work. So during the shoot, they admitted listening to the podcast, and they had some good feedback. And they also gave me testimony about how the episode on the elevator pitch has led to greater confidence in selling. Now, this is something that directly applies to them because they are in the medical sales profession. And this is also another example of how you don't have to be a wedding professional to get the most value out of this podcast. So in the past, I've told you guys about other listeners that I've come across, a masseuse, people in real estate, someone in legal, and now we have someone in medical sales, and then of course a baker, an architect. So there are lots of people who get useful tidbits and nuggets from this podcast. So you can be a medical sales professional and still get value out of this podcast, just like Mr. Osaze did from the elevator pitch episode. Okay, so now back to where we were. Where was I? Okay, anyway, yeah, so that episode pretty much served as a primer for things that he was going to research so that he could learn how to craft elevator pitches for the business as a whole, as well as for specific lines of inventory that they have. Now, people who are in medical sales, they go around hospitals, what else? Not just hospitals, insurance providers, things like that, because they're trying to get people to enter into contracts, and they're trying to build sustainable relationships for the services that they provide, whether they sell medicine or radiography equipment or whatever it is. So this has been useful to help him to craft pitches for the business as a whole, because sometimes you have to make a pitch for doing business with with the entity as a whole. I mean, in other words, doing business with ABC Limited, which is my own company, is going to be better than doing business with XYZ Limited, because as ABC, this is how we stand apart, this is how we provide, this is how we take care of you, blah, 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 blah. So sometimes you have to make a pitch for the business as a whole, and then sometimes you're making a pitch for specific lines of inventory that you have. Now, okay, buy this particular radiography equipment, or switch over from this brand of paracetamol to this brand of paracetamol that we offer. So it was useful because it served as a primer for him to go and do some more research, search on Google, search on YouTube, and then find specific tactics about how to craft the elevator pitch for the business and for specific lines that they are trying to sell. So now, obviously, to you other listeners, apart from this whole thing of how it served as a primer, I would also like to say that your feedback, whether you give me feedback when we're live in the flesh, if we happen to meet, or over DM, is really valuable to shaping contents on the show and assuring me that the topics that we cover here are meeting a need. Because it's really important to me that the things that we talk about over here are not just things of academic interest, but they are things that you guys can use on a day-to-day, no matter what industry that you are involved in. So be sure to holler back with feedback whenever you can. whenever you can. And today's call to action, I'd like you guys to pray for the lovely couple for provision and grace in taking care of this new baby. And let's also use this as a touching point for other listeners who might be going through significant changes in their family as well. So remember, the best way to use this podcast is not to assume that you have gotten the whole gospel truth from it, but use this as a primer to start researching in depth things that you need to explore. So long as I can give you guys new perspectives here on sales, marketing, and running a business, then I think that the mission has been fulfilled. So not all of you have to engage me to help figure out what your sales process should be, or to help run trainings for your subordinates. You can just use this as a primer to start researching all the things that you need to find out. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening to the show. I'm your host, Abuja-based sales and business consultant, Tavishima Gregarious George Ayide. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.